everyone, this is Himanshu, and in this lecture, we will read about the satellite systems of India. The very first one in this is the INSAT series. As we have already discussed about the INSAT series, these are basically the communication satellites, which are launched into the geosynchronous orbit at an altitude of 36,000 kilometers. Now, when we talk about the application of this satellite, the INSAT satellites are used mainly for the telecommunication. So let me write it here. So yes, it is used for the telecommunication. It has been used as for the broadcasting, telemedicine. It can be used for the meteorological services, disaster warning systems, and so on. Now, the very important principle communication satellite works on are on the basis of the radio frequency bands. So, whenever you talk about the INSAT or whenever you're reading an article, they're always mentioned a radio frequency bands, the Ka, the Ku, the C band. So, let's understand these things in a very layman terms, not in very deep. So, the first one, what is basically is used as a radio frequency, that is C band. So the C band actually operates to the 4 to 8 gigahertz, and the C band is primarily used for the voice and data communication. So we can say that it is voice and data communication. And because of its weak power, it requires a larger ground area. So remember this thing, it has a weak power, so therefore large ground area is required, which means the size of the antenna would be pretty much large, and it provides a lower transmission power over the wide geographic area. So this is the only thing you need to remember about the C band. And the next band is what we call as a Ku band. Now the Ku band operates at 12 to 18 gigahertz. Now it is because of this, it typically used to the DTH that we use at home, right? The DTH or the tele education, you can say that it can use for this thing, and because it uses a higher power, and so the size of the antenna is pretty much smaller. Apart from that, there's a third one, what we call as a Ka band, which basically operates from 26 to 40 gigahertz, and it is generally used as for the broadband and the two-way consumers for the military networks. So we can say that a two-way communication generally use this one, or for the military purposes we generally use the Ka band. Now the Ka band frequency band facilitate the high transmission speed and significant information transfer with the use of a small ground equipment, and thus it is used for the broadband. So we can say that it has a high transmission speed also, high transmission speed, and the antenna size are relatively smaller. So as the frequency goes higher, as the power goes higher, the size of the antenna reduces. So this is important, and you can remember this thing. So let's talk about the few of example of the INSAT series. The first one that we're going to discuss about is the latest communication satellite that we have sent recently. Let's start with the GSAT, I think. Yes, so GSAT 30 was recently launched. So it is basically the ISRO's latest high power communication satellite, and it will actually replace the existing INSAT 4A. So it will replace INSAT 4A into the orbit. The satellite will provide a communication services to the Indian mainland. That is important. To the Indian mainland and islands, plus Southeast Asia, the Gulf countries, and Australia. For this, it will use the Ku band, and for these, it will use the C band. Why I'm getting so much deep into these things, because the last year, if you remember, they have asked about the IRNSS, and for that they have specifically asked that what is the distance which is covered by that satellite, that is 1500 kilometers apart from the Indian mainland. So this is why a little bit, if we go deep enough, not that deep enough where we learn the technicalities, but small enough so that we should know that what exactly this satellite does. I think that would benefit us a lot in the UPSC exams. So this is mainly about the GSAT 30, and applications are same as the DTH, VSAT, ATM, stock exchange, television, anything, because it is a KU and the C band. So it's KU band, so yes, DTH will be there, and every other facility regarding this thing. So let's jump to the next one. So similarly, recently we also have a GSAT 31 also. It is a high powered satellite communication. It is same as the previous one. But the important one is the GSAT 7A, which is basically a military satellite. This was pretty much in the news recently. So this is also called as Angry Bird. Yes, exactly. So it is a military communication satellite dedicated to the Indian Air Force. Let me, if I can write it here, for Indian Air Force, IAF, right? So what it does actually, that it will boost remotely piloted aircraft operations by satellite control of military unmanned air vehicles. For example, so the used for the UAVs, right? So it will extend the reach, the flexibility, and the endurance of the UAVs in India and the beyond the line of sight missions. So generally for the military application, it will be used. So, more importantly, the Air Force links various ground radar stations, ground airbase, airborne early warning stations, and the control system. It can be used for that. So you don't have to remember all these words, but just remember that it is for the Air Force. So whenever some application regarding the Air Force comes, so just make a tick on that. So yes, it comes under that category. Apart from that, the GSAT 7A is only the second dedicated military satellite, because earlier we were using the Rukmani. Let me write it here as a note. Earlier we were using Rukmani, or this is also called as the GSAT 7. This was currently used by the Indian Air Force, but now GSAT 7A would be the next one. So remember these things, they can ask you these things. The next satellite we can read about is the GSAT 11, which is again the ISRO's heaviest satellite till now. Let me write it here. GSAT 11. Now this is the ISRO's heaviest satellite. Which is basically 5.8 ton. So the high throughput communication satellite, it will use the 40 transponders in the Ku and the Ka band. So this is mainly about the GSAT 11. And the high throughput communication satellites in India, if you're gonna talk about these things, so it includes the four main satellites. So in the series itself, in the GSAT, so it is GSAT 11, which has been already been launched, and apart from that, there is a GSAT 29, there is GSAT 19, and there is GSAT 20. The 20 will be launched in 2020 itself, but till now the dates have not been finalized yet. So this is mainly about these satellites. So this is, I should mention it here, high throughput communication satellite. High throughput communications satellite. and these satellites will play a very very crucial role, in the high speed broadband connectivity, for example, like in Digital India, BharatNet, National Broadband Mission, VSAT network. In all these 11, 29, 19, 20 play a very crucial role. So do remember these names. And so I'll mention it here, like for the Digital India, for your reference, and broadband connectivity, it can be used amazingly. So this is mainly about the INSAT series. In the next lecture, we will read about the Indian Remote Sensing Satellite System, IRS. Thank you.